You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk 1150 AM. Now, back to the show with local mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell.
You are listening to The Money Hour at 1150 AM, KKNW, the Saturday, July 16th show. You can also catch my podcast, Facebook premiere show, or my show on my show YouTube channel. In addition, for more information on my upcoming events, you can go to tinamitchellevents.com. I'm your host and local mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. I'm here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you are hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. I'm here to answer any questions or to connect you with my guest. Please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Or you can go online to themoneyhour.com. And now in studio, why writing a book is good for your business. I'm having a conversation with Keith Ferrin of Simply Communicate right here on 1150 AM KKNW. Keith, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again. It's good to be back, Tina.
Yeah, very excited. So a little bit about Keith. According to New York Times, 81% of people say, I want to write a book. Yeah. Less than 0.5% actually do. So why? They don't have a plan from start to the process, and making it to the finish line in their book not only is possible, but much easier than they could ever dream. Writing a book is not only a wonderful accomplishment, but it's one of the best business decisions that you can make. Keith is a messaging and public speaker coach and has written over 10 books himself, have helped business owners, entrepreneurs, coaches, and nonprofit leaders get their words out of their heads, on pages, and into the hands of their ideal reader. So you can reach out to Keith at simplycommunicate.com. So again, really excited to have a conversation with you, Keith. So let's start out with, why should your average Joe business person be writing a book?
Well, I could go through a whole lot of reasons, but the three that I would give, one is really the confidence of what there's something just when you've written a book and it shows up in the mail and you're holding that first copy in your hands, there is just something. People talk about it legitimizing your kind of authority, which is actually my second reason, the kind of the authority in an industry. People that write a book, you're just seen as an authority. But I think there's also something that happens inside of you that when you've gotten that out and you're holding it in your hand, I think people that I know who have gotten their process, their method, their whatever it is in a bunch of different industries, get it out of their head and into print, their own confidence in the way they serve their clients just goes up. So I would say, confidence and authority, but then also a lead in, I say a lead in to finances rather than just making money, because I think that a big piece of how your average Joe business person makes money with a book is how that book becomes the entry point into a conversation about doing more, whether it's a real estate agent that writes, but it doesn't have to be a long book. I mean, I think that some of the most successful books that were written by average Joes, obviously you've got the people that write, sell millions of copies, but the average Joe person, the books that are 60 to 80 pages and solve a very specific problem in their industry, I think are lead in to oftentimes $10, $50, or $100,000 contracts. So.
Yeah, absolutely. My book is much more pages than that. But what I really loved about my book that I didn't even realize the benefit until after it was written. When you get with people, the whole idea is you want to connect with people. And to connect with people, there are things that you want to share about yourself because that's connection. But ideally, a connection is when you're not really a lot of part of the conversation as much as getting to know that other person. And when you have a book, it allows you to not feel you have to share things about you because you have your book book. And so I can really spend quality time with you, Keith, getting to know you. And then it can be, oh, by the way, if you want to know a little bit more about you, about me, here's a complimentary copy of my book. And, not that you have to give your book away, but, you can have that as an ability to get people to know you without having to share. And then the people that really want to get to know you, they will read your book. And the ones that don't, it probably wasn't a good idea that you talked a lot about yourself anyways, right? So when did you write your first book?
It's an easy one to remember because I wrote it while we were pregnant with our first child. So it was in 2002.
Okay. And so I shared with my listeners in the introduction for you that you have wrote 10 books. And that is such an accomplishment coming from a person that just wrote one book.
Yeah. Working on another one right now. So
exciting. So what has changed in the book market in the last couple decades? I know a lot.
Yeah. To say everything is, I know is just this catch-all, but it really feels like, as somebody who has I self-published my first book in 2002, and I've traditionally published a couple and self-published a bunch, and done that in kind of each of the 5-year periods since then. So much has changed, and I would really kind of identify 5 big categories where it's changed. One is the price, and I know that you wanted to talk about that more in depth later, but typically when I ask people how much they spent on self-publishing their book, or how much they think it's going to cost, I see people wasting heaps of money, or they don't write a book because they think it's going to be so expensive.
Yeah.
And it's just, and that's because when you first started out, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, when I wrote my first book, to get the cover is always more expensive than printing the guts of the book, because the cover is the quality paper and the full color and blah, blah, blah. But I had to print 2,000 copies. It probably cost me $8,000 to $12,000 to get my first book in my hand. And it's now, to give you an idea, to get my last book in my hand cost under $500. So
wow.
So the price has plummeted, the quality has skyrocketed. So while the price has gone down, how many industries have the price go down while the quality goes up? And this is one where it has, that it used to be very, very obvious what a self-published book looked like. And now it's nowhere near, you can now, even as recently as last year, Amazon, if you're going through KDP, you now even have a hardcover option. So it's not even just hardcover that has to be. Some is the perception. And I would say that goes hand in glove with the last one, the quality and perception together, that the perception of a self-published book isn't as big a negative as it was 20 years ago.
Well, when I wrote my book, I was really excited about writing it, probably 12 months into it, and all the thoughts were coming to my head, and I had my notes. I was, talking. My husband is making noise out there. I hope that we can't hear it.
I can't hear anything.
Oh my gosh. Keith, anyways, so I was taking notes and, just writing down my thoughts, but then I wrote my book and literally sat down and wrote it in 3 weekends. It took 10 months to publish, because once I received that original one that actually came to my door, then I read it a bunch of times before I went and published it. So, but why do majority of people not finish their books?
I'd say they don't have a plan. One of the things I tell my clients all the time is that every vision needs a plan. Without a plan, a vision is just a dream. And that for so many people, they have this idea, this dream of writing a book, and they write the first couple chapters, but they don't have a plan from the get-go of what, who this is going to serve, who's really going to read this, how am I best going to solve their problem, what is the outline of that going to be. That when you have a plan of attack, that, I mean, just take this show, for example. We hopped on before you hit record, and we were talking with Benny and Becky and the other 2 guests, and we were talking through, and you walked through your plan, And you've done this enough times where you know what the plan is. And so, not that weird things don't happen, but the number of times that really bad, show ruining things happen is extremely, extremely rare for you because you have a plan. But if you just said, I'm just going to go record for an hour every week, some weeks would be good and some weeks would be bad, but you would have a lot of ones where you never finished recording. And I think the same is true with a book, that people go in with an idea, but they don't go in with a plan.
Yeah, the idea is the first and the plan is the second, for sure. Yeah, when I wrote my book, it wasn't to be a selling author or to make money off it. It was just to really have something that I could share for people that were interested in, what I've learned in my 27 years in career. But why do books lose money?
Well, books lose money because people, when you don't have a plan, you waste money and spend money in places that you shouldn't be spending money. And so I think that when people start out, they say that the average self-published book sells somewhere around 300 copies. Okay. So just doing the simple math, and I'll get to because traditionally publishing books aren't significantly better than that, quite honestly. So, but self-publishing books, if you are spending, let's just, even to use easy numbers, let's just say that you spent $3,000 in the process of self-publishing your book. Well, if you're going to sell 300 copies, your profit margin has to be, you can't give any away for free. And your profit margin has to be $10 per book before you're going to even get to the place where you've broken even. So I think that when people spend,
and you're going to pay well, I don't know, depending on how big your book is, but I pay $7 for a copy of my own book. Right.
So it depends. Yeah, it depends on a whole lot of things, whether you've got a hardback copy, whether you got a paperback, how many pages it is, what kind of quality. I mean, there are all different ways that you can spend money on doing it. And I just think that when it comes to books losing money, not having a plan, not wasting money at the beginning, and then also not having what I call a launch team, not having people who are in it with you, I think that that all of those contribute. But I also think that it's really important, because if 81% of people in America, according to the New York Times, want to write a book, then there are people that are watching this that are in that category, and they've believed the notion that I need to get a traditional publishing contract, because if I get a traditionally published contract, they'll promote my book like crazy and it will sell 10, 20, 30,000 copies at least minimum. And I remember having a conversation with a CEO of one of the 5 major publishing companies in the country, having a conversation with him. And he said, what most people don't know is that we are amazing at our jobs, and 15% of our books make money. 85% of the time, they don't get it right.
That's
and you're talking about major publishers that to just assume that if I get an agent and that agent gets me a contract, you're just it's going to take you way too long.
And, for the normal Joe Smith businessman out there, or a Tina Mitchell that's been in the mortgage industry, it's really the money is made in, really, just as you shared at the beginning of the show. I mean, you have instantly leveled yourself up without them ever looking at your credentials or anything that you do. Oh, by the way, I'm an author of such and such. So you're going to make more money in the business that you do. You're going to have more opportunities. You're going to retain, have higher conversion, just because you have now leveled yourself up with the expertise that you have your own book. And so just a really exciting venture, and a profitable venture, whether your book is out there selling and making money that way or not. So what is the biggest mistake that you see people making in the writing process?
Yeah, that's one I see time and time again. And that is that writers write what they want to write rather than what readers want to read. And if you're writing a book for your family, and you're writing a book that's a memoir of your life, and you just want your kids and grandkids and great grandkids to have it, whatever, I still think you should write that book. I still think you should write, because the process has gotten cheap enough and simple enough and fast enough that if you want to write a book, you can write a book and get it self-published and have a good quality book that can last on, even if you only sell 50 to 100 copies, and the whole process can cost you under $500. I contend that no first-time author should spend more than $1,000 to write their first to get their first book in their hand. That's my philosophy, and what I help my clients do. And so, but when it comes to writing, if you're wanting to write a book that reaches more people than the people who share your last name,
Yeah.
then you need to write a book that people want to read. And so when you're writing it, you need to explore in that initial plan process, who is my ideal reader?
Yes.
And what problem do I solve for her or him? And when you identify that, when you become crystal clear on the person that you serve and the problem that you solve, then it becomes significantly easier to write a book.
Yes.
And it's a book that people will want to read.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, I spent about $2,500 on my original plan was to have somebody actually change my writing to make it sound, professional. The reality is when I looked at what they were doing, it was not my words and the way that I talk. So I'm 97% of the words are mine, but my book was not meant for people to buy it. It was meant for me to share what I had to share, and it needed to come from me and the words and how I normally speak. So it's definitely interesting process for sure. So what is the biggest mistake that people make when marketing their book, when they're writing a book to go out there and get it to the public and to be able to make money off of it?
It comes down to the number one. One is you're trying to do it alone instead of with a team. And the other reason I use the number one is because you do a one-time push and then you quit. That's what most people do. They buy themselves, get the book done, they get it in their hands. They order way too many copies at the beginning. So they've got 600 copies sitting in their garage. And then they do a big Facebook blast or a big Facebook ad campaign, and it runs for 10 days. They're really frustrated that they lost a ton of money. And so they think their book's not very good and they don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
And
So it's like anything else, Keith, right? I mean, if you're doing any type of business, you can't touch somebody one time. You've got to be really to go out there and market at a high level. You have to hire a team that has the expertise that can help you through that process. Otherwise, it's not going to be a successful one. Keith, I got to wrap up and get to the next segment, but I love having you in studio. I'm excited to have you come back in and share everything that you're doing. And I'm excited because I gave you my online calendar that we get something to talk personally in my next venture as well. So thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Happy to do it. Look forward to talking. Thanks, Tina.